Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, sponsored by JockoCoaching.com. My name is Clayton Fletcher, and I am in safe, socialist New York City. Happy to be bringing you yet another edition of the world's longest running poker strategy podcast. Spent some time this week doing some study. Something really cool they do at Jocko Coaching, it's kind of like a webinar format where you're actually working with the coach live, where the coach, in this case, Jeremy Menard, who's really a top player and coach on the site. So the topic was betting rivers after capping range on turn. So if you really want to get granular and specific and look at one part of your game at a time, this is an example of how they do things on Jocko. I thought it was amazing. He had like 30 or 40 people viewing and asking questions in the chat as he's explaining his systematic process for figuring out whether or not we should bet rivers after we cap our range on the turn. So a typical example of this might be that we open from, let's say, late position, we get one caller, and then we're in position on the flop, and we c-bet and get called, and then on the turn we check behind, and then our opponent checks to us once more on the river. So what sort of things would you be thinking about to help you decide whether or not to go for value on the river? So obviously, if we've capped our range on the turn and kept the pot relatively small, we now have a small to medium pot, and should we try to eke out a little bit more value, and what sort of things might affect your decision? Jeremy just did an incredible job of explaining a process that you can use to help you decide whether or not to bet in these spots. And he gave us one example of a time when we might be more inclined to bet, and then another example of a situation where we might be less inclined to bet. And later on in this episode, I'm actually going to take a hand that I played recently online, where I had capped my range on the turn and then had to decide whether or not to bet the river. So this is something that I think is super cool about Jocko, which is they take one little aspect of the game and just focus on that. So you're studying one part of your game at a time, rather than trying to just kind of generally get better at poker all at once. You're like, today we're going to work on this, tomorrow we're going to work on that. And it's really more like a curriculum that you can follow to get better at poker. So I love this site. I love the way it's set up. It's very intuitive and user-friendly, and it's just really set up in a way that maximizes your time investment. And as you guys know, I am looking to invest 200 hours into studying this year. And so I'm really spending a lot of that time on Jocko Coaching. Another thing I liked about what Jeremy was doing is he was using GTO Wizard, which we'll talk about later, to cross-check his analysis and make sure that he was coming up with the right answers. And also just kind of look at ranges and figure out the theory behind the strategy. So if you guys are interested, I've got a great deal with Jocko Coaching. They're partnering with us right now. I don't know how much longer this is going to work, but we have a promo code. Use this link and you will get 7 days of free access to the whole website. It's amazing. You can click around for yourself and see how everything works and see if you agree with me on how intuitive the whole thing is and how great all the coaches are. And then when you're ready to buy, you'll save 20%, a 20% discount just because you used our special partner link, which is jocko.poker/TPE. That's jocko.poker/TPE. Kind of a big week for news in the poker world this week. the three branches of the World Poker Tour kind of stealing a lot of the headlines. You've got your World Poker Tour, which is obviously the main tour. Then you've got WPT Global, and then you've got Club WPT Gold. And it seems like the marketing and public relations arm of each of the three branches of government are not talking to each other. You had Ren Lim, who recently lost his gig with GG Poker, signed as a WPT Global ambassador. You had other parts of the World Poker Tour brand saying that he's banned from the site. At the same time, you've got artificial intelligence making bikini photos of Maurice Hawkins. It just seems like the WPT triumvirate, three-headed monster, if you will, seems to be following that old adage of there is no such thing as bad publicity. I don't know if that's true, but the other thing that happened with Club WPT Gold is they announced that they're back in New York and gave us absolutely no information about how or why or what changed, how they had to leave just a couple months ago, and that now they're apparently back in New York. So I don't know, like, am I going to deposit more money on there? Am I going to play on Club WPT Gold as a New York City resident? Am I going to do that knowing that it could be taken away again soon? Do I feel safe? Do I feel like jumping back in? I mean, the games were really soft when I was playing on there before they left New York the first time. So I probably will dip my toes back in the water, but it would sure be nice if they give us just a little more information about what the heck is going on. It seems like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and I just wish they would get their act together. Other news, I told you guys it was a big news week. Other news this week, the state of Virginia and the state of Maine both announced that they are voting on legalizing online poker. So step one would be for the votes to pass, and then hopefully they can all join the shared player pool liquidity. Right now we just have 4 states, right? We've got Pennsylvania, Nevada, New Jersey, and Michigan right now. I'd love to see Virginia, Maine, obviously New York, and other states join the union in this supposed land of the free. So to be continued, but it seems like steps, very small steps being taken day in and day out in the right direction. And the last piece of news I want to share before we get to some more strategy, the Full House Act, which is designed as an amendment, I guess, of sorts to the One Big Beautiful Bill, which, as you probably know by now, at least if you are in the USA, you know that it cut the allowable deduction for gambling losses from 100% of winnings to 90% of winnings. And so this is looking to reverse that, not charging players tax on money they didn't actually win, I think is a good idea. Dina Titus, Ted Cruz, Stephen Horsford, Max Miller, and others introduced and co-sponsored this bipartisan bill, which will hopefully make my taxes 1 year from now a heck of a lot easier to handle. So I will try to keep you guys updated on all of these developing stories in the coming weeks. But right now I want to talk about poker. And last week we reviewed a hand, just a quick pre-flop spot where you may recall I 3-bet shoved with 20 big blinds. So the action was the player in second position opened for the minimum, and it folded around to me in the cutoff, and I had the king of diamonds, 10 of diamonds, and I was in the cutoff. I shoved my 20 big blind stack. At the time, I felt like maybe I was a little out of line, and I wasn't sure what the wizard was going to think of this play, because king 10 suited, while a decent hand, is certainly not a premium. And remember, the original raise did come from early position. So let's run this through the solver, this quick pre-flop spot. See what GTO Wizard thinks of my play in this situation. Guys, I'm very happy to say the solver approves. GTO Wizard makes this move 59% of the time with all combos of King 10 suited. It also makes this play 100% of the time with King Queen suited and King Jack suited. Also quite a lot with Queen Jack suited, Ace 5 suited, Pocket 8s, Ace 10 suited, and of course, bigger hands like Ace King off, Ace Queen off as well. Throwing in a couple of Pocket 5s and Pocket 4s, not all the time, but 10 to 20% of the time, just to mix those in occasionally. So yeah, I thought this was great news, that I felt like this was a good spot to do something and not wait around for premium hands. You don't have to wait for premium hands. And very often in tournaments, especially turbo tournaments, doing that is actually suicidal. So I'm very happy to see that the solver approves of my play. I really enjoy using GTO Wizard. It's my favorite tool to help me improve my game. You can study any spot like this one, obviously pre-flop, post-flop. You can plug in different variables such as whether it's a PKO or whether you are in the money and it's an ICM situation. You can do cash games, tournaments, satellites, mystery bounties, basically any type of format. You can control those variables. You can also practice against an expert computer perfect robot genius who will definitely beat you. And it's so easy to use, even a technical idiot like me can handle it. I have no trouble using this program, and I want you guys to give it a shot as well. You can get 24 hours for free just by using our affiliate link. And then when that 24-hour trial is over and you're ready to purchase, you will save 10% just because you used our link, which is gtowizard.com/p/TPE. All right, well, as promised, I want to look at a spot where my range was capped and I had a decision on whether or not I should bet on the river after checking behind on the turn. So let's talk through the hand. This comes from a $109 online tournament. We are in the money. The blinds at this point are 7K and 14K, and I've got about 270K in my stack, so just under 20 big blinds. And I raised it up from the button with pocket 10s. Now, the big blind has me barely covered. He's got just over 320,000, and he makes the call. So we're going to see the flop versus the big blind. We are in position, hero, with the 10 of spades, 10 of hearts. And now with about 60K in the middle, we've got 240 left in our stack. So our SPR is 4. And the flop comes jack of clubs, 5 of hearts, 4 of clubs. So jack, 5, 4 with 2 clubs. Hero with the 10 of spades, 10 of hearts. So we've got a pair just below top pair, and villain checks. I decided to c-bet this flop, of course, and I went pretty chunky here. I bet half the pot, about 30K into 60K, and villain made the call. So now with 120,000 in the middle, the turn comes the king of hearts. So our board is now jack of clubs, 5 of hearts, 4 of clubs, king of hearts, and villain checks. I actually think I'm probably okay to bet this card again, not because I'm happy to see it or because it hits my hand. It actually doesn't hit my hand very well at all, but it does hit my overall range. That king is way more likely to have helped my hand than that of my opponent. So I think I'm okay to actually double barrel this card on the turn, maybe check behind on the river if I'm getting scared at that point. But I did decide to check behind, control the pot, maybe planning to do a bluff catch situation if villain wants to bet a busted draw on the river or something like that. But yeah, I think maybe betting the turn is all right, but I'm pretty sure checking is also okay, at least some of the time. And that's what I did. I checked it back, and now the river comes the Jack of Diamonds, pairing the board. And so our final board is Jack of Clubs, 5 of Hearts, 4 of Clubs, King of Hearts, Jack of Diamonds. Jack, 5, 4, King, Jack, and no draws came in. All the club draws, all the heart draws, all the straight draws missed. And now villain checks one more time. And so the question becomes, do we want to put in a value bet here? Well, from Jeremy Menard on Jocka Coaching, I learned that there are questions we should ask in order to figure out whether value betting is the best play in these situations. And one of those questions is, how capped is our opponent's range after checking? So I don't know. I think that a lot of guys will check a jack here, hoping that I'll bet again, slow playing those hands, not expecting to be able to get much value out of me when I check behind on the turn, just afraid that he's going to lose me a lot if he leads on the river. So I feel like he's not capped here. I think that a lot of players would actually play a jack exactly as villain has done here. So that's an argument for not betting this river. Another question is, do I beat enough hands to justify a value bet? Another way to express that would just be, can I get called by worse? And is there much worse that can call me? And I think there is. Any 5, any 4. Now that the board has paired, possibly even an ace high type of hand might call. Perhaps a small pair like pocket deuces could call. Pocket sixes that might not want to 3-bet, get it in pre-flop, possibly. Although I do think those hands do shove quite a bit. They might be in some villains' ranges. So yeah, I do think there's plenty of value targets for my 10s to get called by worse. So I do think we've got plenty of hands to justify in that sense. Another good question to ask is, how likely is our opponent to check raise? And so, yeah, that is something that I can't answer right now because I don't remember this exact villain. But kind of generally speaking, the trickier your opponent is, the more check raise river bluffs he's able to make, the less attractive these thin value bets become. In fact, thin value bets on all streets are less attractive when you fear getting bluff check raised, right? So I don't know. I think generally people don't check raise bluff on the river enough. And so I'm not that worried about this unless it's really a player that I have already highlighted as being especially tricky and likely to do that. That's just not something we have to worry about very much, especially when we start kind of getting into the danger zone. Most players aren't aggressive enough when they have around 20 big blinds. They're trying to survive and maintain their stack instead of going for that big bluff to try to get a stack or something. So yeah, I wasn't too concerned about the check raise here. And another question that Jeremy Menard recommends asking is, will my opponent call a river bet wide? And I think against me, a lot of players do call river bets wide. I think I have a reputation online for being somewhat loose aggressive, maybe over bluffing in certain spots. It has been sort of a hallmark of my game that if I'm going to err on the side of being too passive or too aggressive, I do tend to take aggressive lines. And I think that if the players on the site happen to recognize me and know that about me, I might get some more value bets paid off. So on balance, it's not a home run, grand slam, definite spot, but I think that I should bet this river, all things considered. So let's see what I did. Into the pot of 120,000, I went half pot. Guys, I put in 60,000 and my opponent paid me off with the 5 of diamonds, 9 of diamonds. So he's got 9-5 suited, and he did flop second pair and just couldn't convince himself to throw it away against the likes of me. So I did eke out some thin value there on that river after having capped my range on the turn. And that'll do it for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave us a good review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and make sure you subscribe so that you know when our next episode comes out. And for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, with special thanks to our sponsor, Jocka Coaching, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas plays. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her